Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
And today we're talking about traitors, using a traitor in your RPG, or having a traitor in your RPG.
Well, you can decide what we're talking about. What are we talking about?
Having a traitor in your RPG game. So this is a question from Mike and from Facebook, our Facebook page, and he asked, "What do we believe, or what do we think of having a character embedded in the party who has a different goal or different goals than the rest of the party, even goals that are..."
That's different than a traitor.
Okay.
Unless the goals are, a traitor is somebody who's totally against what you're doing.
Well, there you go. I mean, going against what the party goals or beliefs are. A long time ago, for like, let's say the first 30 years of my gaming, I would have said no, this was a bad idea. It could cause, depending on the party, depending on the group of players, it could cause a lot of problems. People could get angry, especially when most gamers probably have this idea that the party's supposed to work together, and it goes against their preconceived ideas of what adventuring and gaming is all about. I've run into a few people who, during my gaming, who believe that it's just part of like real life, so they want that in their game. I remember years ago there was this guy called Stan who was just chaotic evil, and he played it to the hilt. And for me to run him in the game, it was very difficult because I could never forecast what he was going to do. So it was very difficult to run him as a GM. And I was much younger back then. And other players had difficulties with him because they never knew what he was going to do, because on a whim he would do some crazy acts of violence or chaoticness, and they really just didn't trust him at any time, because he could just go off. So because of that, I always thought having somebody who wasn't part of the cohesive group, who went against or had his own ideas of what to do, counterproductive to having a good or a fun party or a good game to play in.
He wasn't a traitor, though. He was just an evil character.
Right. But he kind of went against, like, if what the party will of the party, if they agreed to go to a certain place and do a certain thing, he would sometimes not do that. He would go off on his own, and like, let's say they wanted to talk to somebody, he might kill the person that they were supposed to talk to. So he wasn't a traitor, but he would go against the party's main goals, or what everybody believed was the goal of the party. So he was just chaotic, but he was really easy to deal with, because if you could throw a battle here and there, it would prevent him from getting bored, which I think was the reason why he did the things he did. And when he was happy, he would do less of that craziness. He will what's that term? He liked to just sow discord in the group. So I always had this in the back of my mind, that I would not allow evil characters in my party or in my groups when I ran games. I didn't believe in allowing an evil character, and this came up even recently when one of my players wanted to play an evil assassin type character. I said, "Well, you can't play an evil character in my game." "Well, what about neutral evil?" I go, "There's still evil in that neutral evil alignment that we were playing D&D." So he was a little upset, but he was able to deal with it, and the game went on. And there's been other instances when people, not necessarily D&D where they play evil, but they go against this idea of party cohesion and doing and getting along with what the other characters are doing. I remember in this one RPG game, there was a prisoner, and who was it was in a game at a game con, and one of the player characters was a prisoner, and at one point in the GM's mind, the prisoner was supposed to let go because of the crazy evilness that was going on in the game. And it was like, well, this guy might be enemy or whatever, but there was a greater evil to defeat, and this person could help. Well, one of the other players who was in charge of this, I think it was a World War II game. It was a military game, no matter what. And the person who was in charge, who was like a lieutenant, absolutely refused to let the prisoner get freed, even though the rest of the party, the rest of the group said, "Oh yeah, we could use his skills, we could use what he, his powers or whatever," and he absolutely refused, and that kind of went against that whole idea of the party cohesion or letting this player play. So the player got tired of being a prisoner, and when he took a break, he told the GM, "I'm sorry, but this game is pretty boring since I literally can't do anything because I'm in handcuffs or in irons, and it doesn't seem like I'm going to be let go, so there's no reason for me to keep playing." So he left the game. So here's this guy who is a prisoner in the game and never got to play because he was a prisoner. I would never want to put a person who's going to play a game in that position. So he wasn't really a traitor, but he was a person in irons. Those are stories that kind of tell me that you don't want to have one dissension among the group by having somebody who has a different goal than the rest of the group, whether that goal is simply what the perceived idea of the group is, or actual goal, like a mission of the group.
I don't think that the GM wanted the prisoner to have a different goal of the group.
Well, he was a prisoner, I think. I mean, I think it was a World War II game, and obviously he was probably German or maybe Italian. I don't remember exactly what theater the game took place. The person who was playing the lieutenant, the person in charge of the group, said that absolutely not would they ever let the prisoner. The stuff was hitting the fan, so to speak, and all hell was breaking loose, and they could use his skills, whatever that meant, either with a firearm or I think it might have been a superpowers game. I don't know. Even though the rest of the group was saying, yeah, we should let him go. We could deal with the fact that he's the enemy later, blah, blah, blah. One character was like staunchly saying, no, can't let him go. I believe from what I remember, the GM was really upset because it just kind of ruined the game for everybody, because there was this guy sitting there, and a player sitting there who had done nothing for 3 hours, and when they took a break, he decided not to come back, which is kind of suck. So another reason I just don't like the idea of having people with different goals than the rest of the group, because, like I said, it kind of causes people to get upset in real life, not just role play upset. There was a character in one of the settings. He was like a hobbit, but he wasn't a hobbit. He was I think it was Dragonlance. Dragonlance is a series of books, and they have a third edition campaign setting, and you could play one of these a Kendrick, I think is what it's called, and by nature this thing has to steal, right? They're like a hobbit, and or a gnome like creature, person, race, and they would steal stuff, right? And they would even steal from the party. And I've never played in Dragonlance. I never had that campaign setting. I never read the books. And I hear stories from other podcasts and other actual plays where the GM would ban people from playing one of those type of characters from that culture, because it would just sow dissension among the group and cause people to start fighting, and they were really problematic. But some people love playing those characters. It would just cause a lot of problems.
All of your examples so far have been where the players know that the people are different, or
yes, true.
as in, but you said having a traitor, which would mean that the players wouldn't know, or would the players know?
Well, I guess you're right. I guess what Mike was actually talking about was like, and he mentioned specifically, he specifically mentioned something that had changed my mind about having a traitor or a player character with different goals than the rest of the group. He mentions Burke from Aliens movie, and how Burke he knew that there was aliens. He knew that they were bad, but he still had the mission of getting one and bringing it back to wherever, where the Marines, where the rescue people. I think they rescued one, I guess, at the very end. So that's the example he gave, was Burke from Aliens. And I would definitely, in the first 30 years of my RPG career, probably even 35 years, I would say no, or 40 even. I would say no, because I just couldn't see it becoming a good game. Mainly because most of my games in the past have been like, there were games where the group would all work together. I've never had a group where people would steal from each other. I never had a group where one person would kill other characters. That was just not the kind of groups that I played with. But I have recently talked to a number of my friends who I used to play with a long time ago, and they obviously had different groups, and they would play in groups where people would do that. They would have they played with certain players that would play that way, that would steal from them, that would in a moment literally backstab them in a crucial point for their character to gain hit points or to steal more treasure. They would literally backstab the group. And I go, so how would that end? They will end with either everybody going after this guy and killing him, or kicking him out of the group. And I'm like, I mean, literally, oh no, the character. I'm like, oh well, and the guy would make another character just more or less like that. I'm like, well, why would you keep playing with him? They go, oh, because he was our friend. I'm like, okay,
but they knew the kind of character he made.
That's true. They did, and I guess they would just let him keep playing. I mean.
An Alien is different because you know that there's a traitor in Alien.
Well, okay, so if you haven't played it, so we bought the Alien RPG, and I ran it a few times, and there is a traitor mechanic, or a traitor in the group, in the adventures that I ran, because that's the model, kinda. So in the game there is a company man, and of course everybody who's seen Aliens, the movie, already knows that they can't trust the company man. So they're very wary about the company man and his actions, to the point where a couple of times when I ran the scenario, people go, okay, I'm going to keep my eye on the company man. And I go, okay. And the company man's going, well, hey, I'm just, he plays all the characters that played the company man, and I always took to the character like a fish in water, right? They really liked the character. They really got into the character, and they were all like slimy, right? They all played the character slimy. Like, he was very cordial and very understanding at the same time. He was thinking, they were all thinking the ways to benefit themselves, right? It wasn't so much that they were traitors in a certain sense.
Yes, they were.
But they were definitely out for themselves.
But all the players and characters knew this. There was no surprise.
I would like to run a game where the company man wasn't the traitor or wasn't the slime ball, just to throw everybody off. That would be neat. Because, like, you're right. When I ran those games, this was a published adventure with the game. It was like, well, we know Wilson's a traitor, so we're gonna keep an eye on him, type of thing. And for the most part, most of the players that played Wilson as the character, they were very good. They wouldn't do anything that the other characters could call bad, right? He was very supportive. He gave them good information as far as insight in what they should do. All the characters didn't appear at all to be these treacherous, lecherous, bad dudes and ready to sell their mother for a dime, though they were. But they didn't play it that way, and I thought they did a really good job. Almost all of them did a really good job in portraying the character that way. And I think they all did different things that made the game fun and and it worked. But for the most part, I wouldn't ever have thought of that in my game. But Alien just fits so well in certain particular adventures, especially where, just like in the Alien movie, you're sent to investigate something, and there's a company man telling you, well, no, you just can't nuke the site from orbit. There's substantial company dollars attached to that spaceship, that space station. And the response is usually the same.
Although if you're smart, you should just do it anyway.
Exactly. So, and the response is usually by the group is exactly that. Who cares? Right?
Because let me tell you, that company man will try to kill you eventually.
Oh my God. So maybe your character just kept thinking about that. So it was a self-fulfilling prophecy.
No, he really did try to kill me.
It was pretty good. So other instances where the traitor mechanic is an enemy embedded would be like the similar military game where you have a NPC, you have not an NPC but a player character play or a captured enemy person, because that would require quite a bit of trust on the other players to let this guy go or be able to participate as a free person, and it can go wrong. So probably I wouldn't want to put a player in that position. And I believe the person who did that in the story that I was talking about at the con game, that was why he was acting the way he was, the person in charge, because he said he felt that it was a bad idea to put a player character in that role, and he wanted to make a point of it. So that's why he was very staunchly against letting this guy out of irons and help the group defeat the bad guy, whatever that was. Which I probably would not have been very happy about that if it was just to teach me a lesson in doing that kind of action. Tell me about that after the game is over, and we'll go on and let everybody have fun. But anyway, so actual traitor mechanic, like there's a lot of games, a lot of board games that have traitor mechanics. One is what is it? Battlestar Galactica. There's another one called it's kind of like an offshoot of Battlestar Galactica, where in Battlestar Galactica, it's at the very beginning, everybody draws a card and somebody could be a Cylon. So what happens is that person is working against the other group players. Other players are trying to escape the Battlestar Galactica board game. They're trying to escape to go to find Earth or whatever and get away from the Cylons. And this traitor, who's a Cylon, is trying to prevent that. And in the course of the game, he could be, or she could be found out to be a traitor, and then their abilities change, and then the game takes a little different turn. So in that sense, when you walk into that game, that Battlestar Galactica, you know that there could be a traitor in the group, and the possibility is there is a traitor in the group. Well, when you enter a role-playing game, those rules are not stated. So I think that's the problem we run into when you put a traitor in a game like that. Like, let's say you're playing at a con, and the GM has thought up of having a traitor in the game, who in the backstory it's written that this person is going to work against the party. I probably would not do that. Because unless it's just a paranoid game, I don't know what game. Paranoia is kind of like that, where you don't trust anybody, but that's already inherent in the game. Unless it's inherent in the game, I think using a traitor mechanic or having a traitor embedded in the party is probably a bad idea. I don't know. I really, because of Alien being such a really good game, and it was a really good experience, I really have gone away from the no traitor in my game, in my RPG game. Or
I think the difference is that there's two things. You should either, if you want it to be a good traitor, you probably don't want the player characters, the players to know.
Right.
But if it's if they don't know, they could get upset. So
Yes.
I think that all the stories that I read said that if people knew there was a possibility that someone was a
Okay.
traitor, it was different than if there was a traitor for your whole campaign and you don't, and at the end they're revealed and you don't know it. That's when the groups have issues, the actual players.
Okay. Yes, true.
And if the if the players know that there is a traitor, and then and even if they know who it is, their characters don't.
All right.
That's different than having
Oh,
it
yeah.
where nobody knows. Less likely to be a problem if everybody knows, although they might kill the person if they know, whether in character or out of character at the table.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. There's, like I said, you're right. That's exactly right. If the group perceives that it's possible for there to be a traitor, then there's no contract broken with the group, so to say. But but if there's no hint of it, or there's people just don't believe there's a possibility of it for whatever reason, either the way you wrote out the campaign, or you wrote out the blurb for the catalog for your GameCon game. I think that's where you get into some really places where people might get upset about it. I remember I was gonna say I played in this one game where we were, I forget, I don't remember what system it was used, but we played and we were like in some sort of like a outpost, and it was like sort of science fiction, modern science fiction, and I don't remember what exactly was happening, but at one point somebody would say, "Oh, I need you to, we need to talk." So literally, he took me outside the room, and he goes, "I'm the monster," and he grabbed me, like, physically grabbed me, and I didn't understand what he was talking about. He goes, "Now you're a monster too." So it's kind of like an alien from more like a what is that game? John Carpenter's The Thing, where the thing would infect you, and then you would become part of the thing. And I'm like, "What was?" He goes, "What's that mean?" He goes, "Oh, it means the game's over for you, because you're a monster now." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I left the game. It was funny. And then there was two other players that I ran into. One of them was Felipe in that game, I believe, and another one was a different guy that I didn't know, but I got to know later. And he goes, I go, "What'd you think?" He goes, "I think it was a crap game." Because he was mad because he was one of the first guys to leave the game because the GM had gotten him by himself, and he said, "I'm the monster," and he, with another with an NPC, and he says, and he goes, "Well, so what does that mean?" He goes, "Well, the game's over for you." He goes, "Oh, okay." So he came back into the room because he had his stuff in there, grabbed his stuff. He goes, "Oh, I'm leaving," and so he left. And so I'm like, "Whoa, that was weird." And then I realized why he left, because he turned him into a monster, and he became a NPC, so to speak. And so he goes, "No, I'm not gonna play an NPC. I'm just gonna leave." So everybody did that. So everybody became like, "What's going on?" So then I was, me not being the brightest or the sharpest tool in the shed, I was lulled to getting by myself with an NPC, and the same thing happened to me. And I'm like, and then not much of a bulb, but something went off above my head saying, "Oh, this is what's happened to the other characters." And he goes, "Well, you can still play." I'm like, "Well, how am I playing?" He goes, "Well, you just did, kind of do what I tell you to do." I'm like, "Oh, well, that's not very fun." So but I stayed. And then Felipe was the last. I think Felipe was the last character alive, and so I'll wait for you outside the door. So I grabbed my stuff in. But later on, I ran into the first guy, and he was just not happy. He goes, "Oh, it was BS." I'm like, "Oh, wow." So there's been a few instances where I have played in a game like that, or I have seen that game, or somebody's told me what's happened, and usually it's not a happy story. It just isn't. So my idea of having a traitor or having somebody going against the goals of the group, usually it's a bad idea. But in certain instances, I think, like you said, if there's a little bit of disclosure at the beginning of the game that there might be a possibility of somebody being a traitor or somebody going against the group, then I understand. Then I think I can understand the game going well because people know that this is a possibility.
It may still not go well.
Well,
And people might have bad feelings afterwards.
yeah, but probably okay, that's true. But probably a less chance of that happening if there is a little bit of a disclosure about that possibility. Like Alien, right? In an Alien game, everybody knows that the company man is kind of suspect. Well, no matter what the write-up says.
In an Alien game, everybody is suspect.
Well, what's funny is in the Alien game also they have goals, right? Every character has in the published adventure, every character has goals. You have goals for every scene, and it plays like a movie. That's how they really want to make it feel. So there's usually three acts, and every act is a goal. And then if you are able to meet that goal, whatever that goal is, then you get a in-game bonus, like a Benny or whatever you want to call it, like a plot point, something that allows you to give like a do-over or extra bonus on your die roll or whatever.
It doesn't matter because it's Alien, so you're gonna die.
But I gotta admit that you had fun in that game.
Yes.
Okay.
But I knew people were trying to kill me, and I knew I was gonna die, so it wasn't a big deal.
Right, exactly. So I'm kind of going a little bit softer on the anti, no evil characters, no traitorous characters in my game. But I really think that it should be used very judiciously, and it should be kind of rare. And if it does happen, it should be everybody at the table should kind of know that this is a possibility.
Because if they don't, then they'll probably be upset with you at the end of the game.
Yes. And you don't want that. You don't want people actually getting mad, players getting mad over a game. That's not the intent of playing a game, in my opinion, is to leave the game angry. And I think if there's a possibility of that happening in a traitor in a game.
With the traitor, you mean?
With a traitor, yes. So I think that's it. You really got to be careful if you plan on using or embedding the traitor in a game, in a role-playing game. You kind of have to forecast that as far as
no forecasting. You need to actually tell the people
that's a possibility.
Yes.
Yeah. But then that kind of raises their thing, and they're like looking at each other and going, "Oh."
Yeah, but if you don't, all the stories I read, if you don't tell them, then your group might not stay together.
I think that's it. You're right, because they might get so hurt that your group falls apart.
Yeah.
And is it really worth the group falling apart to run a game where this happens as part of your plot? Probably not. And at least in my book, no. I do not want to upset people enough that they don't want to ever play a game with me. I don't think that's ever happened, though.
You wouldn't know, would you?
That's true.
There you go. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
You have a good day.